On the subject of tax reform, and we'll start with you, Mr. Crow. Tax reform has been a popular topic for candidates in the last several election cycles and here tonight. However, very little has been done in Congress to actually pass a comprehensive tax reform bill. Do you believe it's possible to fundamentally reform the tax code? And if so, how would you do so?
Well, I mean, there's so many people that buy a congressman to give them their little, you know, deduction or this thing or the other to get what they want. It's probably going to be extremely difficult to get rid of it. You know, I'm not a real big fan of taxes. You know, I think that everybody has said if the corporate income tax rate isn't reduced from 35% down to some amount, I think 15% would be a good. We're totally uncompetitive, and our corporations are going outside of the United States because of that. These things about flat taxes and things like that, I don't know that I understand them too well, but I think 15% is a generous plenty, and I think that would be, you know, after you subtract your deductions and things like that, I think paying 15% maybe ought to be all right, and then maybe if you made, I don't know, a couple $1 million, you could increase it by maybe 10%. But I don't like, you know, things that are too dramatic, but I think that I would work for something like that. It's just, you know, 15% tax rate. I think that would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. Senator Rouser, do you believe it's possible to fundamentally reform the tax code? And if so, how would you do it?
Well, first let me say I like the dramatic. I like the idea of shutting down the IRS and starting it. You know, I think that's what we need to do. If we're going to turn this country around, we've got to have a little drama. And we've got to have a conversation with the American people. And we've got to have a little excitement in this debate. So I'm all for the drama. You know, how you do it with a team effort going into an election in November. You know, we've got to have a president that's strong, that articulates the conservative message. And we've got to have a team of House members and Senate candidates that are singing from that same song sheet. Then, guess what? When you get elected, you have an agenda. You know, you have the force of the people behind you to enact the change that needs to take place in order to turn this country around. It all starts with a message and communicating that message to the American people. Personally, I'm for a flat tax. I think let's get rid of the IRS. I think it's awfully challenging to get rid of the 16th Amendment. I think politically, it's going to be much easier to put in place a flat tax that's low, fair, and simple, and one rate. And quite honestly, I don't think the government should charge any more than the Lord requires. 10%.
Thank you. Mr. Pantana, 1, do you believe it's possible to fundamentally reform the code? And if so, how would you do so?
I do. And I think that, you know, as you hear more and more non-answers tonight, I want you to be attuned to the fact that it is a very difficult proposition that our future lawmakers are going to have to undertake. All of the easy choices have been made. All of the easy, hassle-free deals have been done. And what is going to be left is going to require knowledge and courage. And I'm going to offer to you, reforming the tax code is going to be a very difficult, demagogued undertaking. Personally, I support the fair tax, and I think that that's the quickest way to jumpstart our economy and to simplify the tax code. But recognizing the fact that the Paul Ryan budget is the Republican solution to our economic woes right now, and I've supported that. And again, I'm giving you something concrete to hold on to. The Ryan budget was supported by the Republicans this last session. The Democrats did not support it. Mike McIntyre did not support it. It was presented in the session prior. Again, the Republicans voted for it, never got the light of day in the Senate. We have had budget proposals. We have been working to try and simplify the tax code. Closing the loopholes all lives in this budget proposal. I would encourage you again, there's not enough time in a 30-second soundbite, but you've got a website, PantanoforCongress.com. Read the Ryan Path to Prosperity for yourself. It's 100 pages. Do the work, and then tell your friends about it, and then write letters to the editor about it. Because instead of letting this issue be demagogued, you have to have some experience with it. Thank you.
Senator Reiser, we're going to ask you to Respond first to the next question, sir. Illegal immigration is a complicated, multifaceted problem for states and the federal government. What are your plans to reform U.S. immigration law and policy?
Thank you for the question. It is a very complicated subject that is often demagogued, and demagogued for political gain. Here's how you solve the immigration problem. And before I lay that out, I think it's instructive to understand how we got the problem to begin with. You know, we're a large agricultural country, even now. And in the early part of the country, almost all the country was agrarian. In the 1940s, farmers found they needed labor. They worked out an agreement, the U.S. government worked out an agreement with Mexico to institute what they called the Bracero program. That Bracero program enabled Hispanics to come across the border and come and work in the United States. And when they got done with their work, they went home. Well, in the 60s, a fellow by the name of Ted Kennedy and other liberals got together and they decided that program wasn't very good. The reason why was they were concerned about worker exploitation, but rather than addressing the issue of worker exploitation, what did they do? They eliminated the program. Eliminated the program and had no border enforcement. So guess what? The farmers still needed labor. The folks that wanted to come here still wanted to work and go back home, and they did. When folks started to get concerned about border enforcement or about securing the border, rather than going back to Mexico, they decided to stay. Right? So they wouldn't risk, not being able to get back across. Here's what you do to fix it. You secure the border, you put in place good guest worker programs that actually work, that employers can use. And then the third thing, if you want to transition and get rid of the underground, the only way to do it is to enable those who are working, who are paying taxes, who are otherwise contributing to society, let them come forward, earn their way. Then you will know who we need to deport and get rid of, and we will drain the swamp.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pantano, illegal immigration is a complicated, multifaceted problem for the states and the federal government. What are your plans to reform U.S. immigration law and policy?
All of the problems that we face today are complicated and multifaceted. You can't name for me one that isn't. Having said that, immigration here in North Carolina alone, immigration is a $2.3 billion